Hello everyone, and it's truly great to be here. What I want to do today is bring the Business Suite to life with an end-to-end demo. And for context, you're going to see a manufacturing company with global operations all over the world. It's in the high-tech industry, and the CFO detects a couple of business challenges. These business challenges need to be solved by collaboration with the other stakeholders in the organization. So let's go and get started. So imagine a CFO walking in on the Monday morning and getting an overview of the state of the business. What you will find there in the bottom is an overview of sales, revenue, and working capital. This is clearly highlighting there is a revenue gap, there is a sales gap, and on top of that, working capital is not in shape. In the top layer, what you find there is business process insights. Here, we are, for instance, seeing that there's duplicated invoices, that there are orders that are shipped but not billed, but there are also some payment term discrepancies. So we want to get started, and Jewel, our co-pilot, highlights that there are a couple of business process issues that are highlighted, and if we would solve them, we could generate 40 million in value. So obviously, we want to dive in and say, let's start with procurement to pay. What are the issues and what do we need to do? Jewel comes back and said, look, the biggest issue that we have are payment term discrepancies. So we can see the root cause, we can see the total impact, but we can also see the reason for that. And now we want to ask Jewel, do create a plan and help solve for that. Jewel comes back, and with the help of AI, we get a plan. And that plan highlights what we need to do. For instance, updating our supplier master data, enforcing standard payment terms, and so forth. So what do we want to do? We want to say, okay, Jewel, please, go ahead and action these activities. The next step would be to look into order to cash. Do we have some issues there as well? And again, here, Jewel is highlighting we have two issues. The first issue is that we have late deliveries for a number of reasons. And the second issue is that we have shipped but not billed. So obviously, we want to solve for that. And as you can see, there is quite some revenue at risk. So please go ahead, create a plan. Now, Mohammed just talked about the app-less experience. What you're seeing here is SAP Signavio, but I don't have to go to Signavio to go through this flow. I can do this through Jewel, create a plan, and action that. So now, when we go through that plan, we see that we have, if we action all of that, an opportunity to deliver 40 million in value. Now, the next step would be to actually work together with the CRO, because what we also saw, and you can see that here as well, in the revenue intelligence as part of BDC, is a revenue gap and a sales gap. So the key question is, what do we need to do to solve for that? And again, here, we open up Jewel, and Jewel brings us to our opportunity dashboard, where we can see our budget, our forecast, our upside, as well as what is the current gap. And what Jewel is highlighting is, look, the current budget attainment tracks at 80%. We have a 500 million gap. So could you suggest what I should do about that? And Jewel comes back and said, look, there are 3 active upside opportunities that we could actually look into, because if we can move them into the forecast, we would close our budget attainment issue. So the double click would be to say, hey, why don't we focus on that first opportunity, bring us to the opportunity summary, and highlight what the issue is. And the issue is that this particular customer, has placed an order for a certain configuration, but that configuration is outside of the customer delivery time. So now the key question is, will that opportunity then go to our competitor, or could we do something about it? What Jewel highlights is that instead of selling this configuration, we could potentially sell more standardized configuration that we have sold more than 10 times over the past 2 years. So what would you like to do? What we want to do is Jewel write an email to the customer and highlight, hey, we are going to try and do our best to deliver that custom configuration on time, but at the same time, would you be willing to change your mind and go for a more standardized approach? So we send an email, and the next step would be to work together with the COO. Why do we want to work together with the COO? Because we still want to understand, could we actually deliver that customized or configuration within the 30-day lead time? That's exactly what we are going to ask. And here, we're going to ask for the deep research agent to find an opportunity to deliver this opportunity within the 30 days. And what Jules comes back is something pretty interesting. It shows that custom configuration on the left top side that is highlighted and requested by the customer. But as we can see, there's a couple of critical components that are not in stock, and on top of that, the lead time to get there is more than 100 days. So that's clearly not working. What is working is a more standardized configuration that we have solved in the past, as you can see there on the right-hand side in the evaluation. Now that is the option that we want to go for. That's also what Jules highlights. I would position an alternative GPU configuration. But what Jules is also highlighting, if that's not accepted by the customer, we could, for instance, offer incentives for extended lead time. So what we want to do, we want to go for option 1, but at the same time, we are seeing that even in the standardized configuration, there's one critical component not in stock, so we need to work together with the Chief Procurement Officer to get that expedited. So we move to the CPO, and again, Jules highlights that we need to take action on that particular component and controller to get that delivered within the next 30 business days. And we say, look, there is a confirmed supplier where we can do that. Let's move forward and start the PO process. But before we do that, we want to obviously understand, are there any concerns that come up in the business. And one of the things that we are seeing is, through the integration with Perplexity, we are getting an alert that there is a potential supply risk. And Perplexity comes back and said, look, actually a couple of hours ago, an earthquake hit in Thailand, and this supplier has its most manufacturing sites in Thailand. What could we do about that? And here the answer is, we're going to use our SAP Business Network, which is the largest business-to-business network in the world, with more than 3 million suppliers transacting on that every single day. And based on the network, what we find, there's 2 alternative suppliers, but they're in Vietnam. So the question is, could we actually go for one of them? Now what we are seeing, there is one that fits our lead time of 30 days, but at the same time, it is quite expensive. So what we want to do is to understand, did we actually negotiate better terms with this supplier in the past? And we are asking the Gemini agent to find in our inbox whether we did yes or no. And the answer is yes, we did. So we want to take that unstructured data, make that structured, confirm the RFP, and issue this. So we issue the RFP, we should get the components on time, and the next thing would be to work together with HR. What we are finding in general when it comes to the HR organization is the move to a skill-based organization. And what we want to ask Jules is, hey, what are the skill gaps that we are seeing in the commercial organization? And what we have seen, obviously, in this demo so far is that we just have accepted an order from a customer for a special configuration that is outside the delivery window. At the same time, we also saw that we have sold a more standardized configuration, more than 10 times in the past 2 years. So why is the commercial organization not picking that up? Why are we not using the data to shape demand proactively? That's exactly what is highlighted here, that we have some skill gaps in the commercial organization. Those skills are AI-driven sales insights, some decision intelligence, and solution configuration with AI. So what we want to do next, we actually want to ask the SuccessFactors learning agent to come up with a plan to solve for some of those skill gaps. And the feedback is, hey, we can actually initiate an upscale plan that can be delivered in the next 45 days. So then we come back to the CFO, and obviously the CFO picture looks much better. In the top, we have solved a lot of the business process issues, so we can deliver 40 million more in value. But in the bottom, we also see that we do not have a budget gap anymore. We're actually tracking towards a budget attainment of 110%. So we asked Jules to summarize an update when it comes to what has happened in the business, because we want to share that with the CEO of the company. And that's where we get next. As a CEO, you also have a personalized dashboards with the state of the business. And we ask AI to actually summarize the state of the business and what happened. And here you can see that AI summarized that we started the quarter with an 80% budget attainment. But due to the activities of the commercial organization, we can actually deliver now 110%. However, in order to do that, we have to expedite some materials from an alternative supplier in Vietnam. That is more expensive and hence put a pressure on gross margin. Now, what we also saw is that we have solved some of the business process issues, and that delivered more than 40 million in annual value. So what we then want to do is actually open the report and look at the P&L, where we can then also get financial results and insights. And here, we can see budget, versus latest forecasts. We can see top line. We also see cost and gross margin. And the summary is, hey, we can actually deliver 110% of budget, but we as an organization need to be okay that the gross margin will drop from the initially predicted 12% to 11%, simply because we have that alternate supplier issue in Vietnam. But on top of that, we can actually deliver an incremental 40 million because we are solving those process issues in procurement to pay and in order to cash. Now, on top of that, we can then also look at a P&L by time and see that over time, the forecast, keeps ahead of budget, which means that the business is in good shape and we can deliver, on the budget that we set for ourselves. So that would summarize the Business Suite demo, where you could see, how do we detect a business issue, from a CFO perspective. That obviously cannot be solved by just the CFO community. We have to collaborate proactively with the other functions in the organization. And I think what is beautiful about the Business Suite, it's not just the ability to solve that problem, but to do that, at scale, to do that with much greater pace, and also to break down the silos in an organization where these functions come together and work better together.